Jeff laid his head against the pillow. Shutting his eyes tight, he thought about that day back in the forest. The screaming, the burning, the absolute agony that he felt as he was lit ablaze. He had never experienced such pain before. Jeff peeked his eyes open, their color that of a bright red from the hospital lights, as he looked around his room. He snickered to himself as his eyes landed on Lou, who sat snoring in a nearby chair. As he stared at Lou, more memories came flooding back. It had been a few weeks since Jeff's first day in the hospital. He still remembered the conversation his parents had. "Do you think he's even gonna make it?" Margaret fretted. Peter sighed. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I've seen him get into quite a bit of trouble before, but he's never gotten this injured." The room went silent for a little while before Peter continued. "But let's try to have a little bit of faith in our boy, that he'll survive." "What if something goes wrong? I could never live with myself," Margaret asked. "He'll be fine, damn it," Peter snapped. He cringed before responding again. "Sorry. He'll be fine," he said more calmly. He cheered up a little as he continued. "Remember that accident a couple of years ago with that science project?" "This isn't the time to be mentioning that," Margaret said. "But it is," Peter responded. "It's a reminder of how lucky our son can be at times." He chuckled a little as he continued. "Well, that, or he's very clever. Even I don't know how he managed to create an acidic liquid, let alone avoid getting any of it on himself after slipping in the bathroom." Jeff remembered laying there quietly, the thought of smiling plaguing his mind throughout the entire conversation, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. Though Jeff loved how much stress he was causing, it wasn't enough. He craved more. "Tell you what," Peter began, "we can make a plan for the boys when this is all over. I've already got something in mind. Is that fine with you?" he asked. Jeff listened with curiosity, waiting impatiently for his mother's response. "Come on, I need another opinion here, especially now that Jeff and Lou's conditions are worsening." Jeff's snickering switched to low laughter as he thought back on that day. The desperation in his father's voice was very evident and very enjoyable to listen to. Jeff felt his excitement grow as he realized that today was supposed to be the last day in this wretched place. He couldn't wait to get home. He wanted so badly to recreate that feeling he had once more. That pain mixed in with that pleasure from physical conflict. Oh, it was too good. He just had to have it again. Night had fallen by the time Jeff had exited the hospital doors, a smile plastered across his face the whole time. He giggled to himself as he stared out the window of his father's car. "So," Lou began, "are you glad to finally be out of there?" he asked. Jeff just continued staring out the window, chuckling to himself without a reply. Lou furrowed his brow as he looked at Jeff. "Okay, I guess I'll take that as a yes, then," he said hesitantly. Jeff continued laughing, his mind elsewhere. An agony he felt, it replayed over and over again in his mind as they traveled. He wanted so badly to experience it once more, but he had to be patient, just a little longer, before that screaming in his head could finally become reality. He struggled to keep his excitement in check. He couldn't wait to recreate those gore-filled scenarios, one after the other. Hours had passed since Jeff and his family had arrived home, his laughter never ceasing. Even as he gripped the countertop tight, tears streaming down his cheeks, he never stopped laughing. Jeff stared down into the sink. The bowl was now coated in a deep shade of red. His eyes then shifted to the blood-soaked kitchen knife he held, then to the mirror. His laughter switched to full cackling as he stared into his horrid reflection. 2 large gashes were carved into his cheeks, forming a wide smile across his face that went from ear to ear. The wounds began to rip and tear apart as he tried to smile wider. Searing hot pain shot up his skull as he did this, causing him to laugh even more. As Jeff did, he thought about how the pain was finally permanent. He jolted as a loud shriek cut through his thoughts. Jeff spun on his heel to see his mom staring at him, her expression one of shock. "Jeff, what did you do to yourself?" she screamed. Jeff stood, silently staring at her. He burst out into another fit of giggling as numerous scenarios plagued his mind, each of them more pleasurable than the last. He didn't know which one to choose from. Suddenly, Peter rushed behind Jeff's mother. "What's wrong, Margaret?" He paused as his eyes landed on Jeff. "What the hell?" he muttered. "Jeff, what are you doing?" They all stared at each other for a few more moments. Then, Jeff lunged at his father, tackling him to the ground. At that moment, Jeff had decided which outcome he wanted, and he knew it would be good. As the duo fell, he plunged his knife into his father's throat, digging it in as deep as he possibly could. His excitement rose as he stared into those fearful eyes. Oh, it felt even better to witness in person. Jeff cackled as he held his father's head down, digging his blade even deeper into Peter's neck. Suddenly, Jeff felt Margaret attempting to pull him off, but he shoved her away. He glared at his mother as her head made contact with the corner of the doorway. He rushed at her at once, pinning her to the tile floor. He would not let her ruin this for him. Jeff began hammering down blow after blow into her skull, howling in manic laughter with every strike. Over time, his punching began to slow down. Then eventually he halted, letting out low giggling as he stared down at his mother's mangled face. The sight, combined with the pain he felt, was so damn good. He wanted more. So much more. Jeff rose to his feet. Ripping the knife from his father's neck, he ambled over to Lou's room. Inching the door open, Jeff peeked inside. As he looked in the dark room, he made out the shape of Lou laying in bed. Jeff struggled to muffle his giggling as he approached. Once he made it to Lou, he rose, staring down at his chest as it rose and fell. He attempted to smile as he stared down at his next target. Raising his blade, he prepared to strike. But before he could, Lou jolted upright and shoved him away. Lou glared down at Jeff as he spoke in that secondary voice of his. "Did you really think I'd let you hurt us?" he said. Jeff's smile seemed to widen as he rose to his feet. "Yes, you didn't leave the earbuds in this time," he said. "That makes this all the more fun for me. So let's enjoy this, Lou." he finished. Lou scowled. I'm not Lou. Oh, Jeff said. Then to whom am I about to murder? Sully, prick, Lou said before rushing at Jeff. Jeff swung his knife as Lou approached, slashing the blade right through the skin of Lou's left cheek as he approached. Lou flinched a little as he approached, but he still continued his pursuit. As soon as he reached Jeff, he grabbed a hold of him and punched him right in the face. Jeff stumbled back a little, laughing as a new, fresh wave of pain hit him all at once. Lou went to hit him again, but Jeff ducked under it, slashing at him once more. Lou let out a low growl of frustration. As he gripped Jeff, he headbutted him, then began hitting him over and over and over again. He paused as he felt something sharp pierce his side. The two brothers broke free of one another, breathing heavily. Lou clutching his fresh wound, while Jeff clutched his knife. Jeff liked the way those gashes looked on Lou. He made it look just as hideous as he was. They stared at each other for a few more moments, before Lou suddenly rushed out the room, Jeff right behind him. As they traveled down the hall, Jeff flung his knife forward, lodging it into Lou's back. Lou staggered for a moment, giving Jeff just enough time to catch up. As he did, he clutched a hold of Lou, grabbed the handle of his weapon, and yanked it out violently. Then he shoved Lou, sending him crashing down the stairs. Jeff looked down at the crumpled form of Lou, breathing heavily. He found it to be a quite thrilling kill, but not enough. He wanted more. Leaves crunched loudly as Jeff strolled through the woods. He knew exactly where he wanted to go, and he had a gut feeling that those troublemakers would most certainly be there too. He stopped in his tracks as he finally arrived at his destination, and sure enough, right in the middle of that clearing, next to the large tree, was none other than Randy, Keith, and Troy. Each teen gripping a bottle of what Jeff presumed to be alcohol in their hands. Jeff stood, taking shelter among the shadows of the trees, watching as the three boys engaged in underage drinking. As soon as Jeff was sure that they had had enough, he stepped out from his hiding spot. The three boys froze as Jeff emerged into the clearing. Randy dropped the bottle he held, the glass shattering as it made contact with the ground. Holy shit, Keith said. Is that Jeff? Troy said drowsily. They all stood in shocked confusion as Jeff took a step forward, then another, and another. Suddenly, Jeff rushed forward at the trio. Keith and Randy dashed off into the woods. Troy, on the other hand, stayed staring at Jeff, still in a delirious state. As soon as he realized what was happening, it was already too late. Jeff was already upon him. He plunged his knife deep into Troy's round belly, using his other hand to pull him in closer. Troy yelped in pain as Jeff began to slowly drag his knife across his gut. Troy's shrieks of pain only increased as he felt the flesh around his stomach split open more and more. All the while, Jeff giggled, happy with his progress. Suddenly, Jeff pushed against Troy, shoving him against a large tree. Bits of intestine fell out as Troy stumbled backward, sliding down the bark. Troy sat there, staring wide-eyed at his wide-open stomach. Jeff giggled more and more as Troy's head tilted up to stare at him. He loved the fear, the desperation that shone in his eyes. Jeff couldn't get enough of it. His cackling continued, even as Troy's life began to fade from his eyes. Jeff turned and fled in the direction that he noticed Keith and Randy run off to. Jeff giggled to himself as he stared into the glass. There those two were, standing in the living room, right in plain sight. Easy for anyone to find. Jeff found it to be quite entertaining as he watched Randy shriek at somebody into his phone, Keith's eyes darting wildly around. Jeff's joy shot up as Keith finally noticed him. Now was his time. He smashed at the glass, the two boys screaming as Jeff crawled inside. As soon as he was inside, Jeff darted at them. Randy grabbed a hold of Keith. "What the hell are you doing?" Keith exclaimed. Randy suddenly shoved him forward. Keith staggered right into Jeff's arms. As he did, Jeff took out his knife and jabbed it right into Keith's chest. He stared at Keith, his eyes wide and filled with nothing but pleasure as he watched the boy begin to cough up blood. He twisted the blade against Keith's ribs. Then he shoved him to the side. Though he wanted to play a little bit longer, he knew he couldn't, as he had someone else he needed to catch. Jeff's gaze lingered on Randy, who was currently making his way for the back door. Immediately, he bolted after him. "Oh, you're not getting away from me this time," he exclaimed as he tackled Randy to the ground. Jeff raised his kitchen knife. Then he shot his hand down, stabbing Randy into the back, over and over and over again, breaking into another fit of laughter as he did. That ecstasy he felt began to increase as the pain along his cheeks began to intensify. Jeff listened closely with glee as Randy began coughing and spluttering. He giggled more as he watched that precious red liquid he loved so much splatter over the floor in front of him. "Looks like you've had enough," he said, leaning forward. Jeff gripped Randy by the back of the head. Raising his skull, he placed the edge of his blade against Randy's throat. "But don't worry, it'll all be over soon," Jeff said. "Once you finally go to sleep." Jeff finished before sliding the blade across Randy's neck. He let out a heavy sigh of relief as he listened to that gurgling and choking. It was like music to his ears. Suddenly, the front door burst open. "Jesus Christ!" one man exclaimed. "Take him down!" yelled another. "You have the right to remain silent," an officer called as he tackled Jeff to the ground. Jeff howled with psychotic laughter as the officer began to cuff his bloodied hands. "Come on now, make the cuffs tighter. I want to really feel that pain." The officer ripped Jeff from the ground, causing the hood of his white hoodie to fall in the process. Jeff turned his head to the side, staring at the officer, who cringed at the sight of his ghoulish face. Jeff laughed more and more as he felt his cheeks begin to tear open, releasing more hot pain across his skull. The officers dragged him out the house, disturbed expressions on their faces. All the while, Jeff still continued to cackle. Even as they shoved him in the back of their vehicle, his howls of manic laughter still echoed through the cold night air.